And we're staying on the topic of Israel. So the former head of the Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence agency, allegedly threatened a chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in a series of secret meetings in which he tried to pressure her into abandoning a war crimes investigation.
And with us to discuss this breaking development is Patrick Hilsman, a researcher and reporter focused on arms trafficking, refugee issues, the Syrian conflict and the Middle East. In general, good evening, Patrick.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, first of all, how is the Israeli side reacting to these revelations?
Well, we don't have any specific reaction yet from the revelations involving the operation that was conducted against the ICC, but it clearly is part of a pattern of hostility against international law and international courts. We had Karim Khan, the current head prosecutor of the ICC, say that he's been warned in no uncertain terms that the ICC is only supposed to be used for thugs like Putin and for Africa, which is an implication that international law should not be applied uniformly across the board. But in terms of the reaction to international law, it's clear that the Israeli government is carrying out an intimidation campaign against not only the ICC, but other international aid organizations that are trying to provide aid and accountability, like the United Nations Relief Works Agency.
Now, how do you think these allegations are going to hurt Netanyahu and his political career and also his reputation that is already pretty much damaged?
Well, it depends with whom, because with people who support him in Israel, it's likely that killing a lot of Palestinians and committing war crimes will not be seen as a negative. But for a large portion of the Israeli public right now that's out in the street demanding an exchange to get those hostages out safely, it must be an outrageous revelation. Because not only is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu trying to dodge international law at this point, but he's also trying to dodge Israeli law. A lot of the things that have happened recently are illegal under Israeli law. A lot of the actions that he's taken are illegal under Israeli law vis-a-vis corruption. So you have a two-pronged issue for the leadership of Israel, that they face corruption allegations at home, and now the possibility of an international arrest warrant against their defense minister and their prime minister.
Right. We have a quote from one of the ICC officials. They say what apparently Mrs. Fatou Bensouda heard from Yossi Cohen, the head of Mossad then. So it reads, "You should help us and let us take care of you. You don't want to be getting into things that could compromise your security or that of your family." So we have direct threats here. And I'm wondering how will it affect Yossi Cohen himself? Because if I'm not mistaken, he was sort of a rising star in Israel.
I don't think that the allegations that an Israeli defense official threatened members of the ICC is going to play poorly for somebody that's running as like a right-winger in Israel. That kind of thing might even help him, honestly. But in terms of Israel's standing, it's very damning, because the fact is that they can't really defend themselves on the facts. It's a fact that they have said they wanted to starve people. They have deliberately stopped trucks from going in. They have deliberately bombed aid convoys. They've deliberately bombed hospitals. They've deliberately bombed food distribution points. So they're not even trying to argue on the merits of this case. They said that the recent strike in Rafah, which killed at least 45 people, was accidental. You don't accidentally launch 2 missiles at an area. It was deliberate. And so at this point, it's clear that they don't have a leg to stand on in terms of the actual argument. And this is a good thing to see, is that international law is finally starting to be applied in a way that's consistent. The United States tacitly acknowledged the authority of the International Criminal Court when they essentially supported the ICC warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin for the crime of kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children. Now we have the American government saying that they're hostile to the ICC. And under the Trump administration, Fatou Bensouda was actually sanctioned. So the Trump administration tried to treat this person the way they treat international terrorists and criminals. It's disgraceful, obvious rejection of international law at a time when we need international law. There are conflicts in Ukraine, there's conflicts throughout Africa, obviously the conflict in the Middle East, Syria. All of these wars will require international prosecutions in order for there to be justice and to move forward. And I think that there are some people that want to be hypocritical about this and do not like to see international law applied against U.S. allies as well as U.S. opponents.
And it's absolutely shocking what she's saying, that this huge scandal may actually help some of Israeli politicians. This is unbelievable.
Well, you know, nothing really changes the mind of a supporter of a politician. This is how it works, and I think all over the world. But I want to ask you about Rafah. You mentioned 45 people dead, mostly women and children, which is heartbreaking. Now, I think the whole world understands that the October 7th atrocities that happened in Israel are horrible, and it's fair for Israel to retaliate and to get rid of Hamas. But on the way, they're killing, well, now it's over 36,000 people in Gaza. Now, is Israel reaching their goal? I mean, in reality, are they ever going to reach their goal? Because we know that Hamas members are actually spread out all over the world. So is it possible for them to get every single Hamas member who they will be sure is not going to retaliate in a couple of years in Israel?
They clearly cannot do that. They are engaging in a military conflict with an organization that's transnational, that has its headquarters essentially in Qatar, that has its political leadership based in Qatar, and that has proxies and offices across the entire world, from Beirut to parts of Asia. And if they think that they're going to eliminate that movement by just killing tens of thousands of Palestinians, it's not going to work. I mean, the Hamas movement has done despicable things. There's no question about it. But the fact is that you can't, it essentially at this point represents the political resistance of Gaza. And there's no way to eliminate that without eliminating the people in Gaza. So I don't think the Israelis really don't stand a chance of obtaining their goal, because they're fighting an enemy that's spread across the world. And in terms of saving hostages, we've seen headlines in Israel that say things like successful rescue of dead hostages.
Right.
That's a very low bar for success. So essentially the question is, who is this military campaign for? They know they will not defeat Hamas, but its most significant players are not even based in Gaza. They know that the more they bomb, the more hostages will be killed. We know as a fact that many hostages have been killed by Israeli fire. How many have been killed after being taken hostage by Hamas itself? We don't know. Those facts are not out there right now. Right. But the fact is that there is not a strategy
for rescuing
hostages.
No, absolutely.
It's pure genocide. It's genocide for revenge without a goal, in my opinion.
Right, Patrick. There was a border incident on the Rafah crossing in which an Egyptian soldier was killed. Now, can it escalate into an open conflict between the two countries, Israel and Egypt?
The Egyptian government is run by a general called Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is very much beset to foreign interests, very much at the behest of foreign interests. He's funded largely by the United Arab Emirates. He has a great interest in maintaining United States military support, which provides the majority of military support for Egypt. And the fact is that he violently crushed the Muslim Brotherhood-led government of Egypt and their supporters, who had a much more pro-Palestinian stance. So in terms of the Egyptian street, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi represents collaboration with Israel. And it's a fact that Egypt is also sealing off Gaza. They have allowed some aid in, but they are militarily partaking in the imprisonment of the Palestinian population. And the idea of a war between two American client states that don't really stand for much at this point is ridiculous. I don't think that Egypt and Israel will ever have a war. They both receive a lot of money from America, and they love the status quo.
Obviously, but if emotions are flying high, then I guess anything can happen, right?
Yes, but not under Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Mm-hmm. His prerogative is to keep security for Israel and to maintain his corrupt military dictatorship.
All right. Patrick Hilsman, columnist, expert on Middle East, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you so much.